there are basically 5 arguments that you hear all the time leveled against the Jewish people. They're all filled with lies. And we're going to go through each one of those 5 as succinctly as possible. Those 5 are like Zionism and Zionists. Those are dirty words. The other 4 are the illegal occupation. Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is a colonial settler state. And Israel engages in ethnic cleansing. So I'll just start with the Zionism part. I'm sure if I ask for a show of hands here, do you guys think that Zionism is a political term? Most of you would say no. Is it a cultural term? No. Zionism is very simply, Blake Flayton said it in the film very succinctly, is the Jewish people's right to self-defense, self-governance in our ancient homeland. You can call it self-determination, but it's simply just a normal human desire to have a safe place to call home. And here in America, over the last 100 years in popular culture, obviously, we've had many, many great Jewish American songwriters, actors, filmmakers, comedians. Think back to Over the Rainbow, right? What is the lyric of Over the Rainbow, which was written by Yip Harburg, right? There's a place that I heard of once in a lullaby. It's like yearning for a home. What's the signature line from E.T.? Remember E.T., Steven Spielberg? E.T. phone home, right? And think of Woody Allen. Think of all those like nebbishy characters who were so self-conscious about their Jewishness. Wasn't there that one scene in one of his films where he felt like he was standing out, like he looked like a rabbi with, tefillin and tzitzis and the whole thing, because he felt so self-conscious. And what's underlying that? It's a desire to just fit in, to feel safe at home. So when you hear people talk about Zionists are no better than the KKK, no, that's not what Zionism is. We're not a racist. It's not a racist political ideology. It's simply a normal human yearning to be safe at home and to live in peace with our neighbors if they want to live in peace with us. Okay, so let's start with Yuval, and let's talk about whichever one you want to do. You want to do ethnic cleansing first? I think if there was ethnic cleansing in Israel, Mazi could tell us what the ethnic cleansing quota was when you went there, but we'll get to that later. But go ahead.
Thank you, Lenny. Good evening, everyone. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening with you, together with you, Lenny, and with this amazing panel and very inspiring leaders. A young leader and a young and inspiring legislator and leader. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that something very sad, horrible, disgraceful happened today with the murder of Charlie Kerr, and most likely because he's well known for being an Israel supporter, still yet to be seen officially. But I think it just manifests so clearly why the fact that we're here and speaking about anti-Semitism and on the topic and anti-Semitism on campus and everything related to it so crucial to the life in this country. And I'd like to commend you, Lenny, really for making this happen, making this film happen. To the extent I know, it's the only film that deals, the only documentary, full-length documentary that deals with anti-Semitism on campuses in the US. And so I think this is really amazing that you made this happen. And before I will elaborate about what you asked, I just want to say that when you consider doing public advocacy for Israel or engaging in this debate, my advice to you would be bear in mind who you want to engage with. All right? Most likely, most of the extreme haters, many of them you saw in this movie, don't waste your time. It's not going to make a difference. Right? I say that with great sorrow. That's not in order to despair you, just to say that maybe focus on where you are able to make a difference. and this is the vast majority of people on campuses, in American streets, on the media, most people are not anti-Semitic. Most people are ignorant, uneducated, couldn't care less, don't want to pay the price of standing for what they believe in. That's where you should aim, because there you can make a difference. Having said that, I think it's good to go back to basic, as we like to say in public advocacy. Back to basic on the long perspective, on why we have this conflict, and in particular in a recent Gaza war. In the long perspective, some of you may better be acquainted with the facts, some not. Jews have been forced out of their homeland for 2,000 years and were eager to go back to Zion, to their homeland. And this started to be a reality in the 19th century and later on in the 20th century with Zionism and with a recreation of a self-governing Jewish state in the homeland of Israel. In parallel to this happening in the 20th century, not in the 19th century, but in the 20th century, as part of the counterback to that, came to be what's later on was known as the Palestinian national movement. I'm not getting into the discussion that when did the Palestinians arrive to Israel, which is like a few hundred years back, and are they indigenous or not, are they people or not, and so on. I just want to say it was a reaction to the national, to the Jewish national movement, and it's kind of a fact today, whether people like it or not. And then we had all the attempts to reach a compromise between Jews and the Palestinians before the independence of Israel. All of them, with no exclusion, were accepted by the Jews and rejected by the Arabs. And immediately, when the Brits left Israel in May 48, 7 Arab countries attacked Israel, plus the Arab people who lived inside Israel, attacked the Jewish neighbors, came to be the War of Independence that ended up in the ceasefire in 1949 between Israel and its neighboring countries. You're probably familiar with the 1967 war that erupted after the siege on Israel and the declaration about the intention to annihilate Israel, mostly from Egyptian leader and Syrian leader, ended up with Israel overpowering its foes and getting control of the Gaza Strip, Judea and Samaria, also known as West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Golan Heights. That's the history, that's the facts in the long run. And we could relate later, if there's interest, to all the attempts to achieve a peaceful solution in later on years. What happened almost 2 years ago, on October 7, was also, I won't say undeniable, because people do deny it, but basically what happened is that a radical extremist jihadist terrorist group named Hamas attacked the Israeli neighboring villages and towns close to Gaza, murdered over 1,200 Israelis, wounded thousands of others, burned down big part of those villages and towns, raped and did other horrible sexual crimes against Israeli citizens, took 251 hostages back to Gaza, 48 of them are still there, and then we were forced to go to war against Hamas. It was not a war that was chosen by Israel, it was a war that was imposed on Israel. This is the preface to where we are currently. Now, let's start maybe with the colonialism aspect. As someone said, you can't colonize your own country. Since Jews were indigenous people in the land of Israel, they came back to the land of Israel. And that's not only a matter of my opinion, it was acknowledged by the League of Nations, by the UN, several other institutions. So there is no colonization. Furthermore, speaking about occupation, whether you speak about Israel in 1949 borders or in 1967 borders or in any other borders, who was it occupied from? Brits have left Israel, and the only international decision was partition to two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. Again, decision that the Jews accepted and the Arab rejected. That's the only thing that happened. Second of all, in 1967, the territories which are now referred to as the Palestinian territories, widely Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria, were controlled until 1967 by Egypt and Jordan, respectively. There was no Palestinian entity at that time or ever before. And I'm not getting into the discussion whether it should or shouldn't be, are they entitled or not entitled. I'm just stating a historical fact. These were not territories that were occupied from the Palestinians because there was no Palestinian entity at no given time. After the Arab countries in 1967 attacked, tried to attack Israel, Israel took over these places. So at best, there are disputed territories about who should be there. You can't occupy something from someone who didn't exist. About, I'm trying to be brief because you asked several things. About the term, the apartheid and the racial state and so on. I'm proud that in Israel, with all the complexity of the Israeli-Arab conflict, Arabs are equal citizens, not only in theory, and in the US we know, in the American history, there's a big difference between the theory and the practice sometimes. In Israel, not only it's theory, it's the practice. 2.1 million Arab citizens are eligible to vote in the Israeli election. We have Arab members of the parliament, with Arab ministers. I did my cadet course some 20 years ago with the daughter of Justice Salim Gibran, who at the time was Deputy Chief Justice of Israel's Supreme Court. Right? That's almost as high as one could get. We had and we have several lieutenant generals in the Israeli army of Arab origin, and so on and so forth. I think that today, probably nearly of half of the nursing staff in Israeli hospitals are Arabs. Big share of physicians in Israeli hospitals are Arab, including the director of several hospitals. So there's so many ways to relate to that. So if you also look at the numbers, following the independent war, there were about 150,000 Arabs, citizens in Israel. Now we have 2.1 million. 2 decades ago, if you look at the population of Arabs in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, it increased in 2 decades over 40%, between 40 to 49%, depends on which area you're looking at. This is not how genocidal situation look. This is not a country that deprived people from their rights looks. This is not apartheid. The Christian Arab minority in Israel is the most well-off segment group in Israel, in education, in socioeconomic status, in every measure, every socioeconomic measure that you will check. More than Muslim Jews, more than non-Arab Christians, more than secular Jews. Any way you like to explore it, Christian Arabs are the most well-off population. I take pride in that because it is enabled in Israel. It's not possible in any of our neighboring countries. Actually, in all the neighboring countries in the Middle East, the Christian population has been diminished or almost non-existent. From Gaza, where the Christian numbers fell by 80% in recent years, to the West Bank, to any country, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, the only country in the Middle East where you have a steadily growing Christian population, Arab Christian population, is the Jewish state, the state of Israel.
So if there's any ethnic cleansing going on in that part of the world, it sounds like it's going on against Jews and against Christians in places other than Israel, but not in Israel itself.
Speaking of the conflict, one has to say there was an ethnic cleansing following the forming of the independence of Israel. There was an ethnic cleansing. In most of our neighboring countries in the Middle East, there was a flourishing Jewish community who were forced out by either the state or the local population. Nearly 1 million people, Jewish people, from Middle Eastern countries, from Muslim countries, fled those countries. Vast majority, in the beginning of the 50s, vast majority fled to the newly born Israel. So, to the extent there was an ethnic cleansing, it was against the Jews.
Against the Jews, right. And if anybody ever, I'm going to move on, but just to finish the thought, a lot of times people bring up the displacement of Palestinian or Arabs during the War of Independence, but in any war there were going to be refugees, and there were many, many different factors at play that led to that. But the numbers are actually kind of small in comparison to the displacement of Jews and the displacement of Christians.
It's true that the numbers are small compared to Jews, but I want to relate to that. Yes, in the war, many Arab citizens of the newborn Israel left Israel borders, and many of them choose to do that under the encouragement of their leadership in Palestine, Israel, and abroad. And the reason was very simple. They assumed that if the Jews will win, they will do to them what they intended to do to the Jews if they will win. And if you're wondering what that may look like, I urge you to go back to all the horrible videos from October 7. That's what they believe the Jews will do to them. And that's the reason many of them chose to leave. The refugee problem, so-called the Palestinian refugee problem, is maintained cynically as an issue by our leaders throughout decades in order to fight Israel. In comparable, the bigger number of refugees, Jewish refugees from Arab states, were incorporated into the Jewish state, the Jewish society, the Israeli life, and are part and parcel from the Israeli life. And there is no Jewish refugee problem today because we solve it, not because it didn't happen.
And there was no issue of Jews' right to return to their Arab countries. And, you know, just to put a bow on it, obviously the increase in the Arab population in Israel really tells the whole story. You know, the net increase from 750,000 or whatever it was, 148,000 in 1948 to over 2 million today. So there goes your ethnic cleansing. Let's turn to Sabrina. Sabrina, it was, just to give you a little perspective on how amazing this young lady is, and all of her fellow students who are in the film. You were a sophomore at GW's when we interviewed you the first time, right? You were but you were already a leader on campus. You were a junior when you made that amazing speech, not even a senior. I don't know about anybody else here, but when I was Sabrina's age, I cannot imagine doing any of those things that Sabrina does. And in fairness, I can say that about all the students in the film. They are just amazing, and it's important that you keep that in mind, that there is hope, that we have this cohort of students, and they're not the only ones. What we tried to do is just be representative of students across the country. So, you know, but they need our support. You know, we need to stand together. And let's talk to Sabrina now about a few things. Now, if you know anything about Sabrina since she graduated in May, you know that she's a plaintiff in a lawsuit against GW. There's certain things she can and certain things she cannot talk about. But if you give us just a brief overview of the lawsuit and why you brought it and what you're expecting or what you would hope to accomplish from it.
Sure. So first, before I dive into that, I just want to say thank you to everybody here for attending and giving this film. It's really an incredible film, the respect that it deserves and the seriousness that it deserves. So that's just the first thing I want to say. And secondly, as I'm watching the film and just my thoughts today about Charlie Kirk, I think something that was said was, Yuval talked about how he was targeted for his support of Israel, which of course, that's been a trend now. But I think we're seeing, of course, in his murder, that people are being targeted for the very premise that this country was founded upon, and that's freedom of expression and robust debate. And that is the foundation and the bedrock of a university. And I think administrators who've been so spineless, and they've allowed these faculty, radical faculty, to run amok, and they're failing to hold them accountable, that's what leads to the murder of Charlie Kirk and Yaron Lishchinsky from the embassy in Israel and his girlfriend Sarah Milgram. That's what's happening. It's a pipeline of hate that has ruptured. And the faculty and the administrators are ground zero for this pipeline of hate. And the murder today and those in the past and the people in Boulder who were harassed and burned, and one of the, I think she was a Holocaust survivor who died from her wounds. It starts in the classroom. It starts in the academia. And that's really a part of my motivation with all my efforts. And just looking back to where I was as a sophomore, I didn't know this. I didn't understand it. I came in as a freshman, progressive and proud and social justice this and that. And my family is from Egypt, ethnically cleansed from Egypt, from the former USSR, had to flee because of anti-Zionism and looking for more opportunities. And my dad grew up in Mexico City, and my parents lived the American dream. This was something to be proud of. But once the word Israeli came out of my mouth, I faced ostracism and comments like Jews are white, and the Holocaust is more sensitized in school than slavery because Jews are white. These comments didn't make any sense, and the ostracism didn't make any sense. So as a freshman and then as a sophomore, I felt I needed free inquiry. So I changed my major from international politics, veering toward Middle East studies, which I can get to in a second because it connects to your question. I changed my major to philosophy to explore the roots of this animus. And I turned this obstacle that I was facing and that I had no idea about into an opportunity to learn. And in reality, my college experience, what I really wanted to study was taken away from me. But I think that a message to all of you and your kids and your grandkids is whenever you face an obstacle as such, it is your duty as a human being for your own dignity is to do something positive about it. And I think that is the modus vivendi of Israel and the Jewish people. And that's really the way I grew up and the values that my family taught me. And that's what Zionism means. So with that being said, so a little bit about the lawsuit, and I won't go on too long because I've been speaking for a while. But what I will say is that I helped the university for 3.5 years. I was super involved with Jewish life. I brought so many initiatives. I actually worked with Ben and Yasmin a little bit to help them, consult them. They consulted me on, I had an anti-Semitism task force on campus that was extremely difficult to pass because I was being called a racist, an anti-Palestinian, right and left, an extremist. I was condemned for condemning Palestinian celebrations of terrorism and told that I was unfit to lead a task force on anti-Semitism because of my stance and my identity. So this was completely ludicrous, but this was what was going on campus. And I faced physical threats the year before, my sophomore year, 2022. I was to speak at an event with Israel's then ambassador, Michael Herzog. And I was told after the event by a friend that there was a group of students who planned to come to the event and hurl beer bottles at the windows of the event where I was speaking. And it's so interesting because now I'm watching this film and you're seeing the students literally crashing through the windows. And it's like, this is completely coordinated. It's insane. Since 2022, they want to hurl beer bottles at me. And now in 2023, 2024, they're actually doing it. It's mind-blowing. But in any case, I digress. And what I will say is that I did experience all these these incidents, and there were anti-Semitic incidents that I was seeing on campus happening to my friend and to my community. And I was admittedly, after this incident, with my friend telling me that they planned to hurl these beer bottles, and of course he diverted them, I was very afraid. And there was a professor that I had at the time of Holocaust memory, and I went to him and I said, look, I confided in him. I said, look, I'm really afraid. I don't know what to do. And this man has an incredible story and has done amazing things for the Jewish community in the world. And what he told me was, if it's not you who stands up, it's no one. And I remember just being in tears for like a couple hours after I had this conversation with him. And after that, I decided to double down on my efforts. And for my family, and in gratitude to Israel and the amazing values that America has afforded its citizenry with, and the amazing values that my family gave me, that fighting back was me being grateful. So that was kind of the philosophy that I went into this with. And now that the university has, and you can, I mean, the complaint is public, so you can see all the incidents there. And I mean, I don't have to go through all of them, but one of the most egregious is a student who was standing with an Israeli flag across the street from the encampment and was harassed by a protester, was told by the GW police to leave. So this is the double standard that you're seeing. So free inquiry and free speech for one side, our side, right, the side of humanity, does not exist. But for them, they get the street blocked off, you know, they're all protected. So
Well, that's the blind spot.
right, and how does that make any sense, right? So it's just like this world of, first it was a moral confusion, and now you have a complete inversion where facts, like Yuval was talking about, don't matter at all. And that's the world we're living in. And I fear, I do have a lot of hope, and I think that, you know, there's a lot of work to be done to restore the facts. But we need to come back to the basic idea that facts matter. That's what's insane, because even in the classroom, going back to what I originally said, facts don't matter. So with this whole lawsuit, I really yes, I'm doing this for justice for, you know, the students and of course myself and the other plaintiffs that have joined me in the effort, but I want reform. I want to see the institution change. I'm not doing this to shame the university. What I'm doing is trying to push it for change, because the lawsuit is the only way that the university will change. And we saw this with Harvard, with Columbia, and the different provisions, you know, whatever you think of Trump, whether you like them or not, this is really the first time that the government, since this issue really started being exposed, has taken initiative to do something. And I'm so grateful that there are some deals being made with teeth, right? A Middle East department must be reviewed, because people like Edward Said, I don't know if, I mean, he was the Orientalism, he spread it across the world, which really pioneered the beginning of this Middle East studies where facts don't matter anymore.
He was at Columbia.
At Columbia, this is the tradition of many Middle East centers from around the United States and in the West. They must be investigated. And this is really this is what I want from my lawsuit. Things like this to change, for accountability for administrators as well. So this is really my aim is reform, and of course, like, I don't have a complete idea, and I really won't say what those provisions will be, but I want reform from the institution. I want them to be motivated to reform, because that's what's going to make them better off. They don't have to wait for this to escalate. They don't have to tell me to act, that they're going to act when it gets violent. When somebody does something like what Laura Sheehy did, it should be taken care of right away. And that's full stop. So with that, I'll turn it to you.
To what Sabrina just said about Title VI. The vast majority of the film was shot before October 7th, before the election, before Trump took office. Title VI has been on the books for a long time. It is not and should not be a partisan issue. It's something that Trump himself could have acted on in his first term. It's something that Biden could have acted on. And so it's important to remember that what you're seeing now with the administration going after various schools is just what the law was intended to do all these years, but nobody ever did it. So that gives you a little historical perspective, and you're right, it's not correct to think of it as a partisan issue. You covered a couple of other things that I was going to ask you about your own background and all, and to that point, it's worth noting that a disproportionately high number of the students in the film come from backgrounds similar to yours in that they're either first-generation Americans or maybe immigrants themselves, as is Councilwoman Ina Vernikoff, Mazi, and Ilya Bratman, the Hillel director from Baruch College. And if we had time, we'll go back to Hillel, because that's another topic worth discussing. It's a little drilled down from the big issues that we're going to talk about, that we want to talk about. But you also touched on something else that I want to drive home. The two overarching messages of Blind Spot, in my humble opinion, are beware of the evil of indifference, and you see many examples of the evil of indifference in the film. I mean, CUNY stands out, Vermont stands out, GW stands out. There are a lot of them. It's that more than anything else, I think, that is the root of the problems. I mean, there are always going to be people who hate, but if the people who are supposed to do something about it don't, then you've got a much bigger problem. The other overarching message is God helps those who help themselves. Now, if is anyone here from Shelter Rock Jewish Center, raise your hand. All right. So, is it possible? Did any of you know my parents, Nathan and Belle Gold? No? Okay. Nat Gold's clarinet playing was at the end, which is why I wanted to.
Oh, that's who Nat Gold was?
That's who Nat Gold, right. You knew him?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, my mother, Belle Gold, this was her favorite saying: God helps those who help themselves. Look at Sabrina. Look at all those students in the film. They didn't go to school to be warriors for the Jewish people. They went to get an education. But they saw a problem and they stood up at great risk to themselves. It couldn't have been fun to do all the things you did and all the frustration and all the banging your head against the wall. But they did it, and they knew, and you knew, they all knew. Even the lawyers said it off camera or in parts that didn't make it into the film. Every student who brought a Title VI complaint knew that at best there would be no resolution before they left school. What they did was for future students, future generations. So a round of applause for Sabrina and all the other students for standing up. It's like after 9/11, we all remember the expression, if you see something, say something. Everybody can do something. Maybe not everybody can, file a lawsuit, or, it's not for everybody, but you can do something. And with that, I'm going to turn to Mazi, because one of the things you can do is contact your elected officials, okay? And Mazi, of course, your origin story is amazing. For those of you out here who don't know it, please feel free to give us a summary of that. I know a lot of your constituents are here, and I think that's great. And I'd like you to talk about the potential for legislation at the local, state, and federal levels that could address this problem. And what's going on in Nassau County now? What are you seeing in the schools here? What should people do if they do see a problem? And what can they expect to be done about it?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for really deciding to be here and to watch this incredible movie. And Sabrina, you are brave. I am very proud of you. You are an example of what leadership is about. In the last 2 years, I have been thinking about our Jewish students, and what I saw, it was just mind-blowing. Like, how come our Jewish students going to universities to get education, all of a sudden they're finding themselves from the basic rights to go from building to building to get education, and sorry to tell you, but the world was very silent, and nobody was helping them. And you were in my mind, and I can tell you, before October 7th, when CUNY, the two speeches we saw that took place, you saw me on the TV, we were there, we felt it.
That's where we felt you.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly, I felt like that is not right, that should not be acceptable. We were on the street fighting with the students because we knew that is bad and something bad is to come. And then within a year, October 7th took place, and we have been seeing where Jewish students being targeted everywhere, everywhere. So many parents contacted me personally right after October 7th, telling me we have to bring children back. We feel my son is not safe, my daughter is not safe. All students, when I went to Columbia University to be with them, crying, shaking, and telling me like, oh, I can't do that, it's too much. I didn't want to study like this. All the students who come back from Columbia to Great Neck, she said, Mazi, I know they're gonna open the campus again, but I don't wanna go. And I found myself telling her, no, you're gonna go back because you have to fight it. You are not gonna let them win this. So you guys are amazing. That's the hope I have. And when I see you standing, fighting for your basic right, that's when I get the strength and the hope. There is hope. The fight is big. It's not easy. Those kids should not handle this. And the administration should do a better job. It doesn't matter which university they are. Better job to protect the Jewish students. The way every other group right is protected in this beautiful country. As a black woman, I'm saying that. It's not fair. It's not fair to ignore the signs when you see Jewish students being attacked, targeted, and ignore it. And I'm saying that to all of us, as a community leaders, as elected officials, this is our responsibility to act. In Nassau County, I think we have been very clear when we saw terrorist supporters has been terrorized in New York City so many times with their faces covered with kafia and mask, coming so prepared to fight. And they know that. They have been preparing themselves, say, hide yourself, top to the bottom, gun, and let's fight. And again, our elected officials and New York State has been ignoring it. And Nassau County, our county executive Bruce Blakeman, and we said this, if you want to come to rally, to protest, go ahead. This is your right. You should do that. However, we are not going to allow you to break the law. They came twice, maybe 3 times. We have been very tough with our law enforcement, and this is really a perfect time to thank our law enforcement, our local heroes who have been out there protecting our rights. And they were here. They realized they cannot play this game here in Nassau County. At the end of the day, it's about leadership. Because New York City is 20 minutes from here. The same people could come here do the same things. But when we are clear with what we can accept, what we are not going to accept, let me tell you, they listen. And it's on us to be strong and firm. The same thing when I decided to pass the Mass Transparency Act, telling them, if you want to come to rally, do it. But if you think you're going to hide your identity and really break the laws, in Nassau County, it's not acceptable. We passed the law. We didn't take any rights for somebody who needs to use a mask for, to use a mask for health purposes, even religious purposes. We didn't take that right. Why a law that has been in New York State over 200 years to protect the minority against KKK, the same law that has been in this state, just because of COVID, they took that bill out. When I was about to bring it back, really to protect our Jewish community. When our residents here in Nassau County, went to the city, got hurt so many times. One of them almost lost an eye, came to me, spoke with me. Why we can all do the same things? Why all of a sudden it's not right? It's not all of a sudden it's like, it's not okay. That's wrong. We need to protect each other. It doesn't matter if you are black, white, Jewish, non-Jewish, it doesn't matter. We need to stand together, and the same policy has to be everywhere. And when we're going to start to hold them accountable, this is when they're going to listen.
Well said.
That's the only way.
Well said. I'll tell a quick story. You saw the footage of the Tulane riot. I was in New Orleans that day. It was several months after we had conducted the interviews at Tulane. One of my sons lives there, works for the New Orleans Pelicans. We're sitting around his apartment And these texts start coming in from Zoe and from Yasmin, and they're telling me what's going on, and they're sheltering in place at Hillel. My son was homesick from work that day, and he was ready to go over there and break some heads. I said, Ethan, hold on. 2 nights later, I'm at the Pelicans game. It was the home opener. I happened to be sitting next to 4 Tulane law students. Okay, I don't know them from a hole in the wall. I'm overhearing them talking. Turns out one of them is a Jewish kid from Long Island. And so we got to talking about the riot, and he said, Lenny, he said, the kid whose nose was broken and bloodied, he's a friend of mine. He was taken to the hospital. He said, Lenny, it took me all night to get his blood out of my hair because I tried to help him and get him away from those people who were hurting him. And that's what he experienced. So there's an example. And you could see it sort of in the footage that people were trying to help each other, but that is what we have to do.